Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Good morning.
We are so happy to have Hajja Najah Bazzy with us today. And for you guys that don't know me, my name is Ali Debeja. And this is a podcast series that we're coining Sacred Space. And we have the absolute pleasure to talk to a leader and mentor in our community, who also has inspired many, many people across the country and the world, actually. Hajja Najah and I have a very deep history, goes back maybe 20 plus years now.
Yes, it does.
Over decades. So I thought our inaugural program would be to have a conversation with her because we felt as a team that she embodied what it means to be someone that is deeply faithful and cherishes every single space in a way that makes it sacred.
You'll make me cry already. Okay.
And just a little bit of a preamble about what this podcast is. We are a group of young adults, Muslims living here in the West, and we would love to have a conversation about what it means to bring the sacred back into our lives, and to make it something that is present with us every day, day in and day out, in our jobs, in our family lives, and bring that conversation to the forefront. And I think many of us find it very hard because we dichotomize our lives to a space where faith lies and another space where everything else lies. And we've believed that our group of people, there's a little bit of vulnerability because we don't want to express God in these spaces anymore. But we're at a point where we want to celebrate that. Celebrate God and celebrate it openly, and discuss ways on how to be that faithful person every day and every minute of our lives and in every space in our lives.
I agree.
So we know that you have done that successfully. We've watched you for decades now, and we hope that you can inspire us in this moment here today, as you've inspired the many other people around you in your life. Maybe we can tell the listeners a little bit about some of your secrets. And so that's why we brought you in today.
Okay. Well, you can see I'm visibly crying because it's coming full circle.
Yeah, it has. I want to just tell a story before we start.
Okay. Am I going to cry through this whole thing? Because I think I'll just use my coffee napkin to do that. God didn't give me eyelashes, so I have to use a little bit of mascara.
So over 10 years ago in 2007, December 6th, I decided to embark on a journey to go to the Hajj. And you gave me a journal. And you said, write in it and express your love of this place. And just as I journaled. And yesterday night, I have this extensive library in my house. And I went to my library and I looked at the books. I needed to write down something. And I have a lot of things to write down, a lot of different type of books I could have chosen. And I chose this journal. I pulled it out and I'm like, oh my God, there was something about this, something it was very touching to me. And then I opened it. But what I opened it to was a phrase that I have been thinking about for the past couple of weeks. And it's a phrase that you mentioned recently on national TV. I literally opened this book, and the first phrase that popped up was written in red among all these entries that were written in black. And it was a hadith from Imam Ali. And I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to say it to you, and I want to get your thoughts on this. But it's very interesting that this came up because this is the same hadith that you used recently as you accepted an award nationally. You incorporated it into your acceptance speech. It says, and this is Ali ibn Abi Talib, thou think that you are a small body, a microcosm, yet the greater world, the universe, is hidden within you. And I thought to myself, this is what Hajji said the other day.
I did.
And then the story doesn't end there. Okay, because I realized it was the same journal that you had gifted to me over 10 years ago before I went to the Hajj. And that's the journal that I wrote in. And I just thought it was really profound that happened. But I also wanted to share something else because you wrote a little letter to me at the beginning of this journal, and I think it's a very beautiful thing. And I just wanted to share it to the viewers or to the listeners, because this is the type of deliberate kind of deeply held beliefs that you impart on others and that you have taught us over the years. And it's been with us ever since, and it's inspired us. It's inspired us to do even projects like this. You said, as you do the tawaf, focus on the Kaaba as your center, Islam as your core. As you circle it, it too will envelop you. And then you said something, take in humanity and the diversity of our beloved Creator. Pay attention to the hands, feet, and eyes of the world. You will learn stories without words.
So true.
And I just wanted to get some of your thoughts. I know I just gave you a lot of information, not really a question, but those two things, the universe within a human being. And tell me a little bit about your experiences also on Hajj. So it's kind of like a two-parted question.
So this could be, like a 4-hour podcast with you and I. You know that. So first of all, thank you, Ali, for having me. Dr. Ali, I'm so proud of you. I don't know that maybe we'll talk about history in a little while. But so I'm one who believes that everything in the universe is connected. I believe that this great creator is very purposeful in everything that he has done. So when I felt that I was sending you off to Hajj, knowing the kind of person that you are and the way that you think, we have a lot of shared visions and a lot of shared values. You're an observer. And I often, in my head, I can actually see you sitting in the back of an audience with the tilt of your head when someone is speaking. And you're listening intently. And I remember when I was speaking, often at the YMA, I would see you in the back listening intently. So as an observer, I think I felt that you share that idea that we're all connected in some way and that everything is responsible for everything. So when I read this from Imam Ali, it wasn't that it was a profound revelation to me. It was that it was a confirmation of what I really felt in my heart, that there is a universe in every one of us. And, we are atoms, ATOMS, right? And so when God says in the Holy Quran that even an ounce of good or an atom of good is counted, like that tells me that God recognizes in Revelation the idea of an atom. And that's who we are. That's what we are. So I do believe in that connectedness. In Hajj, I think that anyone who has experienced Hajj has to experience a diversity of God. And I'm sure when you were there that you learned so many things about people without words. They were in the glances of the eyes. They were in the stories of people's worn out feet or their worn out hands, or the privilege that they had. Like, you can actually see those things. So I think when I wrote that to you, it's because I know that you are an observer and that you have this connectedness to humanity.
What was striking in that comment that you made about the universe within you, it is, and I wanted just to get your reflections on this. When Imam Ali tells us, looks to a human being that potentially is in despair or is having a difficult life, and finds it potentially a task for them to put food on the table, or to go to their long hours at work, and who potentially have family members that are ill, and all those things that humanity has to face and endure. And the Imam comes and tells you, well, look, you human beings might be ill, let's say spiritually, and you might encounter these things in life, but if you look deep, there's something in you that is the cure. It's almost as if the Imam is telling us that there is an unrelenting hope, right, that exists in each human being. And it kind of goes back to an objective that you have with one of your with your organization, Zaman, Hope for Humanity. And I thought those two were so beautifully connected, that despite the things that human beings kind of endure, that there is always that silver lining, that if you can't see it and if you don't search for it, you'll never overcome those things. And what are your thoughts on that hope that the Imam spoke of, that God instilled in us? And how does that inspire you, I guess, in the work that you do?
To me, there's no greater word in the world.
Right.
And I'm serious about that. Because I speak about this a lot. I do all this end-of-life work. And I think I was taught this lesson by the people who are leaving the world. I really think that. So what I understand and what I know deep in my heart is that hope is intrinsic. It's something that God planted in the human heart. Whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, He still allows this factor to exist intrinsically in our hearts. When hope is played with, or when darkness and despair replace light and hope, then we have a human being that's going to plummet. But resilience is completely tied to hope. I am sure of it. Maybe I don't have the research or data to back it up, but this is something that from a qualitative perspective I have seen. I see it at Zaman. I see it at the bedside. I see it all the time. Interestingly enough, just yesterday I was here downtown meeting with the CEO of Shinola, Shannon Washburn. And she said, I have to tell you, my favorite word in the world is hope. And that was just another affirmation that you don't have to be even religiously guided or Muslim. Like we don't own the Wall Street on hope. God owns that. But I think it's tied to something even deeper, which is the foundation of our humanity, which is the idea that we would believe in something bigger than ourselves. And the humility that comes along with believing that there is a creator and a great designer. And if that is in the equation, then I feel like hope can exist. But even if it's not in the equation, I still see that hope is there for people. And out of the worst circumstances, out of war, out of abuse, out of illness, out of anything and any challenge, it's the most powerful word I think that we can speak after the name of God.
So being that you're a deeply faithful Muslim, are there any, instances or let's say any practices in your daily life that helps kind of enliven that feeling? And there's anything in the faith culture or faith tradition yourself that you found has helped you kind of overcome those moments of darkness that you can kind of share with the listeners? Because we've talked about certain supplications, etc. Anything that you would like to share?
No one's ever asked me that question, but I'm really happy that you're asking me that question because I do want to share that. But again, I've had a lot of moments of darkness. I've had a lot of despair in my life. People may not see that because I bounce back. But, I've had those dark moments where you're on your pillow crying your eyes out, right? And thinking that there's no one who will understand the situation. Had it when I was 16, had it when I was 21, had it actually when I was a child. Very, very dark moments. But I've learned that, I said this in a TEDx talk. For whatever reason, I've always been able to look up. And I've always understood somehow, even as a child, I think my grandmother had a great influence on me, that this idea of hope is always there. As I've grown older, I've learned that there are key things I must do, and it maintains kind of the spiritual equilibrium in me. The first one was to actually go to Hajj, so that I can experience the profoundness of whatever that required once a lifetime trip is. But thank God I've gone many, many, many more times than that. So I think that is kind of the basis in many ways for the rest of it, because that allowed me to see diversity. It allowed me to see this world, the different colors and shapes of our humanity. And I relished in that. And in every single Hajj I've gone to, there has been very, very profound experiences. Deeply profound. Deep, deep, deep things that have happened at Hajj. After that, my first one was when I was 36. I'm almost 60 now. I learned to stay in wudu. So I'm always in wudu. And the reason for that is because Hajj made me profoundly aware of my mortality. So I am keenly aware that I'm speaking in this moment to you, but in the next moment, I may not speak. I'm keenly aware of that. So for me, life is every breath. I've learned that. And it's a discipline that I practice. I learned it at the bedside, watching so many people take their last breath. So for me, breath is life. So I want to use it in every way that I can. So I stay in wudu because I'm aware that God can take me in any moment, any second, and I want to die in wudu. It's just something I want to do. As you know, I wash the dead. So like I have those kind of experiences washing hundreds of people. I know when you lose your voice and when someone has to do it for you. That's something I live with. So there's no I don't sit around here and think, I plan for a future, but I'm keenly aware of my present. They call that now living in the moment. The other thing that I do is from Fatima to Zahra, alayhi salam. Sometimes I think as Muslims who are the followers of Ahlul Bayt, we encapsulate them as though they belong to us and us only, and we don't realize the universality of their messages. But when she teaches you to pray for the other first, that's something that even right now as I'm speaking to you, I just got the chills, because it takes you out of yourself. So that's my morning prayer. I ask God to feed the hungry, to take care of the orphan, to send his angels around those orphans so that they don't feel the sense of loneliness, and that he flanks them with his love and his mercy, because they are lonely people and they're vulnerable people, and to cure those who are sick and to help them out. And I kind of go through this universal kind of list, and then I pray for the earth, because she's going to take us, and I don't want to forget that. And then I give my salams to the Prophet, alayhi salatu salam, and all the prophets before him, and all the angels on earth and all the angels in heaven. And then I give a special salam to the angel of death, because although I don't know this angel of death, I know that I'm going to have to meet this angel of death, and that I ask this angel of death to be very careful with me and as merciful as possible. And then after I'm done with all that, I move to my family, my parents, my family, my children, my husband, and every Zamanitarian. And then I pray for all of you who've been a part of my life, because the next generation of Muslims is critically important to me. People think that Zaman is my entire life. It is a part of my life. But if you're to ask me, Ali, and you know this better than anybody else, what am I most passionate about? What is it?
Your family.
Youth.
And youth.
Leaving that next generation as empowered as possible. I'm so passionate about that. So that's kind of how I pray. Stay in wudu. Think about every breath that I take. And then I ask God to make me, and this happened in Hajj, make me what he wants me to be, not what I thought I want to be. This is a critical point for all of us. And I will end here, but one moment in Hajj, I was on the Kaaba wall, underneath the golden gutter, which I think there's some sort of magnetic, spiritual magnetism. I don't know what happens, electrifying right in that spot. And we keep asking for what we want, what we need. And then in a split second, I don't know what happened. I had a paradigm shift, and I all of a sudden felt so embarrassed in front of God. I felt so embarrassed. I remember the moment so well, and I began to just bawl my eyes out, like a place in my soul that I had never cried from. And I said, I got it. I'm so sorry. Because it's such a moment of arrogance when you think you know what's best for you. And I said, please make me what you want me to be, not what I think I ought to be. So when I go stand judgment in front of you, I'm absolved. Put me where you want me to be. I'll throw away my schedule. And I did. I threw away my schedule. And now I live my life being wherever he wants me to be, with no apologies, none whatsoever. So if I have a meeting and something else comes up, like my mom needs me, my family needs me, I stop, I cancel my meeting, and I go take care of my priority. And lastly, the priority is God first in my life. La ilaha illallah. My family, no matter what it takes. And then everything else. And he's my scheduler.
So it's a good transition. It sounds like, just to kind of recap, because there was a lot to digest and reflect on, but you maintain hope by grounding yourself in the very basic tenets of what God has kind of prescribed to us. You center your life around prayer and acts that are purifying to you, in service of others in your family. But I wanted to transition and ask you about something that you and I have had multiple conversations on. Because this litany that appears in Shiite tradition is very compelling. And potentially, if one were to read it over and over again, it becomes almost the playbook by which a Muslim should operate. And if they were able to kind of master that, they've kind of achieved that ultimate success. And that is a dua called Dua Abu Hamza Thamali. We know that Abu Hamza Thamali was a companion of, I think, Imam Zain al-Abidin. Mm-hmm. And he, many profound things in there. But I just wanted to get your perspective on that. Because we do know that, you do, your life's work is in service of others. Unlike many of us, who feel that we have potentially menial jobs and are in a rut in our lives, and don't understand our focus in our the meaning behind it all. But somehow it seems as though you have kind of honed in on that, and I believe it has something to do with your love of this dua. So give me some thoughts on that. I don't want to bring out a passage because I'm not really sure what inspires you, but just your kind of thoughts and reflections on that.
So, yes, I'm very inspired by it. Imam Zain al-Abidin, by the way, is very important to me. I must say that everyone, when I made, because I grew up Sunni Shia, when I chose the love of Ahlul Bayt and their teachings, my whole life changed, by the way. Because there was someone for every event. And so like when my dad was dying, I was just like so glued to Imam Zain al-Abidin because I thought no one can understand the death of a father better than he can. So Dua Abu Hamza, one of the things that Shia Islam offers the universe, not the world, are these incredible dua that are so sublime that they take our intellect, our spiritual intelligence into a whole nother space and location. Two things. One is in Dua Kumail, you and I used to break down at the same time, I noticed, over the idea that, God would remove the love of this dunya from our hearts. And I know that was something that resonated with you as well. In Dua Abu Hamza, every time I get, right in the beginning of the dua, where it's said that God created us, though He is needless of us. I fall apart. It is so profound to me that we could be this special creation and that we have this free will and that we're created with this spiritual intelligence. That whole idea of how special we are, and that's the phrase that just nails it. He created us, yet He is needless of us. He loves us, but yet He is needless of our love. تحببوا علينا وهو غني عنا. It's like, oh my gosh. These things move me very deeply. The dua goes on, to talk about Hajj several times. And while ziyarah is very, very important in our religious tradition, I also sometimes think that we forget about how important the Hajj is and the life lessons that we will learn there. And then the whole dua that talks about the vulnerability of our humanness when we are on that washing table, and that we are really dependent at that point on other people to take us into the belly of this earth. Mm-hmm. These things for me are deeply profound, and I live with them. I listen to Dua Abu Hamza every single day. Mm. Every time I'm in the car, I just play it. Because what happened was, one day at the Islamic Center of America, during one of the YMA Ramadans that we had, the YMA was having a session. Well, it was one of the nights of Qadr. We stayed until Fajr time, and there was a group of us there, and a person from the Saudi happened to be there reciting Dua Abu Hamza with Haji Aus, Sheikh Aus. I was kind of in a trance that night listening to the dua, and I asked God to enter and to scribe on my heart the words of this dua, so it became a part of me. And I think that's another thing we don't do. We read the Quran, but we don't ask God to inscribe the spirit of the Quran right into our hearts. I can't read Quran very well at all, so I have to lean on the prayer that I have for God to inscribe it into my heart. And we know that's possible because the Prophet ﷺ, he was, as we learned, that he was not only the vehicle from which God spoke, but he also lived the Quran in its totality. I think that's something we need to emulate.
Part of the dua talks about how we look to God with all of our hopes and our desires, and I'm paraphrasing. And then we ask Him, just like you said earlier, to bring at our hands and in the works that we do, to be in complete service of Him and almost kind of submit to that will, not to super plan and not to all of our lives work so hard to reach a moment in which we've made it, right? That dua asks us to step back from our free will almost and allow God to, at our hands, bring forth that goodness. And I just wanted your thoughts on that. Because I think modern times and modern culture kind of pushes a human being, a man, a woman, and we've also indoctrinated this into our culture now here living in the West as Muslims, to go full force and everything that you want and need, obtain it, and be successful at it, right? And attain that status that everyone's trying to attain. But it seems as though that these litanies and this dua specifically is telling us something different. That is to pull back and to cleanse your hand with that will of God. Allow you to go forward and do that good work. What is your thoughts on that? Because I feel as though we are tryhards as human beings. We are trying too hard to be something and lose focus and lose that meaning, right? And become disillusioned by it potentially, as many people are at in some part of their lives, and trying to attain that ultimate, status and goal. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a hybrid. So I think that the only independent source in the universe is God. I think that our free will is what allows us to attain nearness and closeness to God. So without free will, then there'd be no game. There'd be no evolution of our spirituality. So we always have a choice to choose God or not to choose God in any single moment and in any certain circumstance. So I think it's a hybrid. I think that we are interdependent, not independent. And when we are in interdependence, our free will and our acknowledgement of God's will are both in play. It's kind of like, in my mind, it's kind of like a symphony. You know, one is not independent of the other, but we still have this choice. So at any moment, I can choose to forget God in any of my thoughts. It's a choice. I can choose to forget him as I'm doing this podcast and actually think that I'm doing this podcast. Yeah, it's true we're here, and it's true that we're having these deep discussions, but it's because he created the space for us to do that. So, and that's why when Imam Ali says there's a universe in each of us, this is what he's talking about. I also think that there's a space in which arrogance is a natural part of also our human being. And it's good to check ourselves all the time and just to be conscious of that arrogance and say, did I really think that I've accomplished that? Like, do I really think that CNN happened because of Najah Bazzy? CNN happened because of a lot of prayers that the work would be pleasing to God and would be elevated by God. I don't think I got myself there. I don't think so at all. And if it wasn't for the thousands of people who helped this organization out, it would not have gotten there. But did I still make the decision to get a nonprofit? Yes. Have I made the decision to not take a paycheck and sacrifice over $1.5 million from my family's life to do this work? Yes. Those were decisions I made. But I made them in a sacred space to serve God, trusting that I won't go hungry, I'll still have clothes on my back, my family will be okay. So there's that kind of deal that we make day in and day out with God. When we're making it with ourselves is the problem, right? So, because then that's independent. And we can't control so many variables. So why do we think that we are so independent?
And control.
Right. Where I do push back, and I push back on all the scholars, everybody knows this about me, I just cannot handle that word test. God is testing you. Because I see that as like a limitation on our humanity. I rather see God challenges us, and we have capacity, and once we reach the capacity, if we're willing, God will take off the lid, and there'll be another challenge and another capacity. Towards self-actualization, actually.
Right. So I want to shift the discussion a little bit. I want to talk about some personal things in your life, if that's okay. But I wanted to know if you remember a conversation we had about 20 years ago.
Okay.
We were sitting, and honestly, I think it was like winter, it was like probably February, and we were sitting in what was then called the YMA. It was the actual building that houses the Maya school now. And we were having a meeting, and we're in the hallways. And we were having a conversation about our lives, just in general. And you said something to the effect that one day, I have so many stories to share that I want to write a memoir about my life. So 20 years ago, you're saying this, and so much has happened in the past 20 years. Do you think you're still at that place?
I'm writing it. I'm finally writing it. Because I think it's the stories of so many other people, Ali. My life is the story of so many people who, telling their stories, have profoundly affected me, and I think their stories would profoundly affect other people. And so, I'm really big on this American Muslim identity, Muslim American identity. I had always grown up feeling a little marginalized in the sense that I wasn't Arab enough, or, because you don't speak exactly the right way, and, all of those kinds of things. And then when Islam all kind of, I made these decisions about being a Muslim, intellectually choosing Islam and then choosing the path of Ahlul Bayt, all those things. I think, and this isn't a point of arrogance, it's a point of truth for me, that there's something very special and unique about the American Muslim identity. And I think when it's allowed to be nurtured the way my identity has been allowed to be nurtured, it has so much massive potential to do good in the world. Because we're very unique. You can't really put us on a census. You can't tease out the American Muslim identity. It's a new identity. It's a blended identity of these beautiful cultures and this intellectual, spiritual Islam, and that's not bound to cultural, norms, issues or norms, right? We can get through that. I think that is a very, very, very powerful place. So those are the stories of so many other people. And so the book is, I think, in chapter 5 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're actually writing it?
Yeah. I have a little bit of help now. Someone actually stepped up after CNN and said, have you ever thought about writing a book? I said, yeah, I started, but I'm only on chapter 3. I don't have the time. And I don't know how to make the time for that. Maybe it's just not the right time. And this person said, because I started 2 years ago, said, I want to do it for you. I'll be your ghostwriter. I said, I have zero money. He said, I'll do it for you for free.
Wow.
So now I have a ghostwriter who's helping me out. Amazing writer. So see, that's the kind of thing. I've learned if something's not happening, the only door you can knock on is God's door. Because that door will open when it's the right time. So 2 years ago wasn't the right time for me to write the book. Why? I don't know. Maybe because I wasn't CNN global top 10 hero at the time. Maybe now the book will do better, and maybe now there will be more lives touched as a result of the stories of all these people who've affected my life.
So, and continuing on that, your life story about being other people's stories as well. You have a brother that is differently abled, mm-hmm. as you would coin it, as you have termed it before. I've heard you say that before. Mm-hmm. Who has a lifelong terminal illness, and who's still alive today, alhamdulillah. Mm-hmm. His name is Sammy. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot of conversations with you about him because I too have someone in my life that I deeply love that also has a terminal illness, and I've kind of leaned on you. But I haven't experienced it like you have, and like your family has. And I was wondering if you can give us some insight, and just maybe a backdrop, a story about how it was growing up with him, and even today, what kind of lessons he teaches you, and what those lessons can help other people with as well. Like, it's just,
he's an everyday reminder. Just last night, he was a reminder. So I want to go back to the word terminal illness, because one of the things that I've been teaching physicians a lot as I'm aging and saging is that in reality, we're all terminal. And so it's really important because we don't see ourselves as terminal, right? Because there's that intrinsic hope that we're going to live forever. And so coaching and helping people understand that there is intrinsic hope for those who believe in an eternal life. We aren't going to die. We are going to live forever. We're just transitioning, right? And so I'm writing about this idea of what it means to be terminal, and that if we can actually capture what it means to be terminal, then we would really live a lot freer every single day if we thought about
And it would also help us
idea,
understand
right?
disease as well.
Yeah, and that our lives are terminal. We are all going to leave.
Kind of underlining or pointing out that the mortality is very real and vivid in everyone's lives.
Exactly, right? So regarding Sammy, my mom is, I think, the hero in the story, because even at 88 years old, she is still cooking for him and trying to help him. She can hardly walk. And so, you're seeing that love. I watched it last night. I'm like, oh my goodness. His soup, his this, his that. Sam has been a force in all of our lives. I was just texting Gail last night about this, about how powerful Sam's resilience is. So Sam, I say he's differently abled because we grew up, my mom treated Sam like any of us. So we fought with him like siblings fight. He spit at us because he couldn't hit us. Like, you know what I mean? Like, wrestle with us. And he yelled and screamed. And he went to prom. And, he cared about when he was, a teenager and his pimples and all those things. Everything that we go through, he just cannot move a thing. So we do everything for him. From brushing his teeth to Q-tipping his ears to feeding him. But last night, I was feeding him, and and he'll probably watch this podcast, it takes several hours to feed him. And, you're sitting there looking at this man, 64 years old, not married, no children, waiting for someone to chop his food and literally put a spoon in his mouth. And I'm doing this, and I'm thinking to myself, we are so little when we're so wrapped up in our own issues. But this is a person who still has huge hope for his life. And he's figured out how to be large and in charge of his own entire life by the pupils of his eyes. When my dad was sick, of all my siblings, Sam was the most helpful to me. He ordered all my dad's prescriptions by moving the pupil of his eye, which is the only thing that can control his communication. He golfs online. He watches movies. He handles all of my mom's bills. He is the man of the house, yet he can do nothing for himself. His resilience, his desire to live. He's literally choking yesterday trying to eat his food because the muscles in his throat are shutting down. He has about this much left to be able to just fit a spoon in, and he's still choosing to eat even though he might aspirate over a feeding tube because he loves his life. He never complains. He can't do one thing, nothing, but can do everything at the same time. He has created in me a tremendous awareness that I can move. That's why I move. And that's why every moment has to count for me, because I'm keenly aware that he can't move. And when people waste time, they make me nuts. What are you wasting time for? Why? Go serve the world. You don't have to be a big shot to serve the world. Just go do good. In medical ethics, to do good and to do no harm. I live with that every single day, to do good and to do no harm. And it's helped me a lot because I think about Sam every single day. Every day. I know when he goes to heaven, he's not going to have a wheelchair. I get that. And alhamdulillah, I'm going to meet him and he's going to be walking. I know that. But what he has done in our family and for our family, none of us siblings have been able to bring value to our family like he's brought to our family. And he's been the president of his organizations. He's one of the most active fundraisers for Zaman Online. and he just has a sense of humor. And the thing that hurts me the most is when people look at him with pity, but he does not pity himself. He has no pity for himself. And I don't know how he does that.
Seems like Sam needs his own memoir.
Sam is his own memoir. He really is. Beyond amazing.
I'm kind of, it's the loss of words, which you just kind of shared with me, because I think as human beings, and as privileged as we are, having everything at our fingertips and being able to move extremities in our bodies, and able to bat an eye lid and protect ourselves from the sunlight and feed ourselves, and a person like this is unable to move not one part of their body and is grateful for every single moment of it. Except many of us, get very agitated and impatient when we don't get what we want, when things don't go our way. And it's definitely such a life lesson.
It's interesting you said that about the eyelids, because yesterday when I was feeding him, he's getting red right around, the eyelids. And that's because the muscles to close the eyelids are weakening. And so his eyes are becoming very dry and very irritated. And as I was feeding him yesterday, Sam, I hope that you're listening to this. I know you will. I couldn't help but reflect about, my goodness, just the eyelid. When God says that we're so ungrateful, we are such ungrateful human beings at the same time. We moan and ache about things that are really irrelevant.
Like first world issues, right? First world problems, as they say.
Oh,
we live in a very affluent society. Many of us have almost everything that we need, and I think many of us spend a lot of times, at least, complaining, not in any way, kind of grateful for what we've been given, actually.
But at any moment, any one of us could be like Sam.
100%.
At any moment, even though he was born with muscular dystrophy, any one of us could be in a car accident that would make us paralyzed. And so that's the idea here. When we talk about living in that moment, it's like, what are you going to do with that moment?
Was there ever a moment for you or anyone in your family in which they were almost embittered by seeing their loved one have an illness like this? Did you ever feel that you went through that and asked God why? Was that part of that healing process that it took you to come into terms or, reconcile that you do have a family member that will never be like you? And how what were some of your thoughts and reflections in those moments?
I have a couple of 6 siblings. So I have my brother who needs a heart transplant, my eldest brother, who's like, the gem of our family life. And he's just a very unique human being. So the idea that he needs someone else's heart and what that really means has been profound. But I say at least he's lived. He's 67, I think now, and he's been living with this heart problem since he was 32. I have a sister who has battled 4 cancers, should have died many times, including a couple of months ago. And she's still with us. When your siblings or the children of your siblings or the people who are your DNA are sick and ill, I don't ask why. I ask, how can I help? What can I do to make their lives just a little bit better? What do they need? And to try to understand that this is temporary. But if they've lived good lives, these diseases and illnesses, these are temporary things, and they're going to grow from them, and all of us are as a family as well. And there's resilience in it. It's not submitting to the disease, because I don't really believe that like God sits there and gives you the whammy and says, like the Wizard of Oz, you're going to get this and you're going to get that and you're going to get this. I just believe it happens because God created the universe and things are going to happen. The challenge is in how do you handle it when it happens. I again think Sam has taught us all a level of resistance. But faith has completely guided my family. And it's the hope that we have in God, I think, that somehow, some way, these lessons are there and you just manage day by day. It hurts. We cry a lot. We're worried a lot. We pray a lot. But it is what it is. And so I think I'm fortunate to come from a family that's had a lot of challenges. A lot. We've seen death a lot, more than most families in our community. But there's something that it's taught us. It's taught us how to love differently, I think. All my cousins share the same experience.
What do you say love differently? Do you want to...
We don't take it for granted. Like, even if you look at our cousins chat, the male inside of my family, cousins chat, it's always about the memory of the people we've lost and about how those memories are so profound. It's like when your grandmother died, Ali, and you and your cousins all went up on stage and talked about how she made her kamuni, you know, and these memories. Like, my family relishes in the memories of the life and doesn't really focus on the death. And I think that's just taught us how to love differently. We don't have to get together all the time to be a close family, but when the chips are down, we are there. And I think that's important. The priority, again, God, family, then everything else.
So God, family, and everything else. We know that you do a lot of service work in your day-to-day. You run a very successful organization, Zaman International. You have many volunteers, the humanitarians, the people that donate, the people that are in the trenches with you working every day. There was something that you once said to me that also resonated and you had taught me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and kind of shift the focus and potentially end this because we do need to wrap up. You were standing in front of a group of about 20 young adults, youth leaders, people who wanted to give back to the community, people who had a lot of energy and were bright-eyed. And you said to people, don't ask how I can become a leader. I kind of vividly remember how you said this. I don't know why. It just kind of stuck in my head. She said, don't ask how I can be a leader, but ask how I can be of service to others. And from that, you coined a term that I hadn't heard at that time, service leadership or servitude, or a servant leader, as you coined it. And I wanted to ask you, how does that impact both your organization and also your daily hustle? What does that mean? Explain to some of the viewers, or the listeners. Daily
hustle. I never thought about that, but I guess it is a daily hustle. It is a daily hustle.
Because, just kind of to step back a little bit, the concept of leadership, especially in the West, is this kind of full force. Someone's going to take, the bull by the reins, and, they are going to be the center figure to bring about any type of change or success, and at any cost, right? And that is a courageous leader. That is a good leader. Those are the leaders we want on, in our at the head of our companies and the CEOs. It's very different than what you explained to me many, many years ago, and what you've shown to us personally.
That's very profound that you remember that. So the reason why corporate America is having its struggles is because it's adopted a leadership model like that. That you take the bull by the horns, that you're the courageous person. Courage comes, this is the first time I've said this because it's just come to me. Courage comes when it's not about you. And that's what I meant by being a servant leader. Now, this was taught to me by Stephen Covey, a great Mormon leader, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But servant leadership means that it's not about you. It means that you are able to relish in the joy of watching other people reach their full potential and be leaders of themselves first. The most effective leaders have conquered their self. And then once they have the personal victory, as he says, they're able then to have the public victory, and their circle of influence begins to grow and grow and grow and grow, because there is an authenticity about the love that they have for other people. And they see in other people God and the God-given potential, and they want to build that capacity because they know that that influence is going to keep growing and growing and growing. So if I invest my time in the YMA leadership, in the MYC leadership, in the volunteers or the directors or my children or anyone that comes into my circle of influence, if I am able to lead from behind the troops, then I can see where the troops can go. This was a General McCarthy leadership principle. The greatest leaders lead behind, and they can see where their troops are going. But if you're a leader who's about yourself, you're going to lead from the front. And oftentimes you don't care what's happening behind you because you're just worried about where you're going. Alhamdulillah, I could say with the right leadership training, with difficult life lessons, with a lot of tears and a lot of hardship and a lot of soul searching, I think that I can say I've become a leader who understands how to lead from behind. The strongest leader is the one who's in the service of others. And it's not what I think they need, it's being able to stop yourself and to not be in an imposing position, to think about what they need, because you're understanding their potential. And it really comes from God. It's living a God-conscious life, that He has a plan and gave us the free will to plug into His plan. And I hope to be one of those people who's able to plug in to that plan and to understand that plan, when you submit, I don't say submit in a surrendering way where you have nothing to do. You have to be it's an active act of God consciousness. Then everybody in front of you becomes very valuable. And I see that. And it gives me great hope.
You know, that word value, I feel as though you look at what's going on around the world right now and some of the work that you do with Zaman, it's almost as if the solution to all the world's problems and to the disharmony and dysfunction that we have, we are living in a war-torn time and our countries are completely being pillaged and so many people are refugees, and we're encountering things like xenophobia and Islamophobia, here in this country, and we have a leader that, wants to sacrifice others in order to gain political, stronghold. But it's almost as if we were to stop, I just want to get your thoughts on this, and actually value other human beings and care for them, to provide for them what they need, that none of this would exist.
That's the human challenge.
If we were to put ourselves in that frame of mind always, as leaders, as politicians, as physicians, as nurses, as mothers, as fathers, brothers and sisters, as an activist, as so many other roles that we play in our lives, you find that it will be a world that is filled with harmony. And it's just like, what are your thoughts? I mean, I know I'm trying to essentialize it and make it so simple, but maybe it is very simple.
It is very simple. It really is. We have shrunk and depleted core human values to the point that they almost seem frivolous. Yet these are the core human values upon which our humanity depends upon and is challenged by. So when I am looking at you, and I've said this many times, and this is why I love Zaman, it's because the world is there. I'm looking at you as a creation that God made. Every child is born innocent into this world. Every child has this natural fitra, this natural, lean toward the spirit. And so I know that is in every human being, even the worst of human beings. But I always believed that those human beings became bad because somehow, some way, either the deck was stacked against them, or there wasn't enough love. Something went wrong, which is why, for me, any victim that can find God finds unrelenting love. And a love that no human being can give you can be equivalent to the love that this Lord who created you can give you. So, to me, that person's humanness has tremendous value because God did make a decision to create that person. That's enough for me.
It kind of goes full circle to the initial hadith that you shared once with me, and that you also shared in the CNN acceptance speech, about the universe being within a human being. And if we understood it correctly, basically what the Imam is saying is that a human being has that value and intrinsic dignity. They both need people to understand that they have it, and the others around them to support them in their humanity and in that struggle.
It is intrinsic dignity, and that's why it's a man. People feel that they are important, that they count. I will admit, I've been jaded by a lot of things that have happened in our community. That's no secret. But I believe that I've learned that when people espouse to arrogance or destruction, it's because somewhere deep in their heart, they really are very sad. And they really are looking for a sense of control and power, because they haven't understood that God is in control and that ultimate power lies with Him, and then it's delivered to us. It's very releasing to know that you don't need other people to validate you. It's very comforting to know that God is the great validator, and to just make a deposit into that spiritual bank account every single day can do a world of wonder for who we are. I also believe that goodness begets goodness. So I think that the more goodness we sprinkle, the better it's going to be, because I also think evil begets evil, which is why there is a call in my heart that all of us, every one of us, just do one good thing a day. And we will change. I believe that, because the universe is listening. I mean, listen, if Siri can listen to us, really, if Alexa can listen to us, do we really think that the universe isn't listening? But we still have free choice. The choice to know God or not know God. The choice to choose God or not choose God. It's that simple.
This has been a very beautiful time. I really appreciate this.
I miss talking with you, Halidi.
No, I'm sure we'll talk many.
Halidi in the D.
Yeah, we're in Detroit, definitely. We do have to do a shout out to the foundation, Detroit Foundation Hotel, for hosting us. Wanted to thank them. And hopefully we, as a community, are able to realize a similar space in which people can have these conversations and express their love of others and humanity and of their faith, because that is definitely what this podcast is about and what our movement's about, hopefully. And we can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing. And you've inspired many of us, and it's given us that will that is needed to kind of refocus and be that vision, that takes that Muslim American community forward. do positive things in our society.
I want the American Muslim community to take the world in a positive direction, because I know we can.
We definitely can. Any last words, thoughts?
It's really amazing for me to see like the YMA leadership come full circle and start doing these things. You know, we spent a lot of time together talking, living life, sharing, crying, everything. And again, this is an example of how when the intention is aligned with the divine, the energy never dies. And that's the lesson I'm taking away from today.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. It's amazing.
And to thank you all, to all the listeners as well. Thank you, Hajja Najah Bazzy, for coming here. And just, you know, if you do not know, Zaman International is a humanitarian organization that is based here in the Detroit metropolitan area. You can go to their website, zamaninternational.org, and there are many opportunities to get involved, to sign up, and to also donate. And lastly, this podcast is run by the Manara Foundation, or Manara Collective, as we like to call it. And Manara is lighthouse, translated. So we wanted to thank them as well for putting this together and having, you know, this podcast. Thank you again.
Thank
you,
I
would also like to thank Manara Collective as well, who's here helping us coordinate all the logistics and do some taping. Malak has been a refreshing kind of type of youth that has come forward and is doing many great things with her organizational work, and we look forward to all the projects that she has coming up too.
She's definitely a Manara herself.
Yes. Yalla, thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.